In 1978, Warren Zevon released the song Werewolves of London that included the lyrics, "You hear him howling around your kitchen door, you better not let him in. Little old lady got mutilated last night, Werewolves of London again." The song was inspired by the 1935 movie of the same name. Little did anyone know that the popular hit song would be released just as a small town in London was in the midst of dealing with its very own real-life werewolf, and things were coming to a head. This is the possession of Bill Ramsey, the South End Werewolf of London.
Welcome to another episode of Hosting Evil. I'm Emily.
And I'm Jess, and I have the perfect case to kick off the October Halloween season.
Ooh. Let's go.
So this case begins back in 1952 in Essex, a seaside town of South End, London, with Bill Ramsey, but he's at the age of 9.
Young.
Super young kid.
Okay.
So Bill had just gotten home from the movies and had visions of like fighter jets and heroes swirling in his head, as most young boys do after watching a movie with those things in them. So he stayed outside in the yard to play, presumably pretending like rocks or sticks were Royal Air Force fighters out to get the bad guy while his parents went inside. So suddenly, while he was playing, a strange feeling came over him. The temperature suddenly dropped to like icy cold, and a horrible vomit-inducing stench smelling like something dead filled his nose. So this 9-year-old was like, what the heck?
And we're having crazy possession-y symbols, you know?
The stenches. Gotta
Yeah.
love those
Yeah.
awful vomit-inducing stenches.
Right?
They're
The
a
classic
hallmark.
symptoms.
So little Bill stood there completely frozen, and the only thoughts he had was wanting to run, followed by thoughts of werewolves. Bill fell to the ground and then cried out for his mom, who could hear him from inside the house. But before either of his parents could get to him, Bill snapped. In his own words later in life, Bill said, "I literally flew off the handle like I was mad at somebody.
Whoa.
Just went into a total rage. I mean, a rage." Bill lost control of his mind. As that rage came over him, adrenaline filled his tiny little body, and he sprung to his feet.
Oh my God.
Bill looked around and grabbed the first thing he saw, which was a wooden fence post, and to his parents' disbelief, as they were still running to get to him, Bill pulled the post completely out of the ground with the fencing still attached.
Whoa, shit. You would be freaking out if your kid's doing that.
It's not just like it's not like loosely in the ground. When those fences are like,
pretty deep.
Yeah.
Poured into concrete or something. Yeah.
So later, his parents actually tried to recreate what Bill had just done on another fence post with as much ease, that's the key word there, as their son did it, and they could not replicate what he did.
Right.
So Bill has this fence post in his hands, and he started swinging it around in a complete volatile rage. Once his parents got to him, he let go of the fence post and then tore the wire meshing from it with his teeth.
Oh my God.
And began to chew on the fencing.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so his parents are watching this and get so scared, and it freaks them out so much that they ran back to the house. They were like, "You keep doing you, Bill. We're going to go inside." They were not
his parents were like,
entertained with that.
You know what? We're not qualified, so
we'll come back later. Let us know when you're done.
We'll circle back around.
And they laughed. Like,
shit.
Look, we all like to think we would act a certain way if we see certain things. I don't know. I would like to think if my daughter was gnawing on fence, I would be a little bit more proactive. But your body does weird things. Your brain does weird things. So I can't fault them for it. But that's what they did.
Yeah, that's
what worked for them.
Yeah. They set boundaries.
So parents left, and as Bill gnawed on the fencing, that same cold, bitter sensation came back over him, and this time a growl came from somewhere deep, deep inside of him, and it's kind of freaked him out because it was like, you try to growl, like everyone can replicate a
Right.
growl, but
Right.
this was like
It's
a
not coming from
growl.
him.
No. But it is the same way,
Right.
but like not him doing it's like one of those weird
Yeah.
outer body surreal moments. So after some time, he calmed down and went completely back to normal. So this kid walks back up to the backside of his house and politely knocked on the door, asking his bewildered parents if he could come inside.
Oh my God.
So interestingly, but not surprisingly, given mom and dad's initial reaction, the family never spoke about this incident with one another for many, 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 many years. They were just like, okay, that was a thing that happened, and if we don't talk about it, it didn't
It
happen.
won't happen. Yeah.
Or it won't happen
It
again.
won't happen again if you don't acknowledge it. That's very like.
Well, and it worked because it would be another million years before anything in Bill's life ever happened again.
Yeah.
But Bill stated later that this day, the gnawing on the fence day after the movies, is the day he believes started his possession.
I wonder what movie he saw.
I know, I was Googling it actually, and I couldn't quite narrow it down.
Yeah.
But it had to have been, his dad was in the military, so I'm sure they took him to see some fighter jet military type movie.
Yeah, that's true. And they're over in
They're in
UK,
yeah,
so very pro. Yeah.
Yep. Had been one of those. So fast forward many years later, as not one out of the ordinary thing occurred, in terms of possession, in the rest of Bill's childhood or his teen years.
Okay.
So now we're in early adulthood with Bill, and he's married to a very lovely woman named Nina. Bill was a carpenter by trade, and the couple had 3 children. Reoccurring nightmares started to plague Bill around this time.
Also, can we just say maybe he had a skill with woodwork?
Yeah, right? So each time in the dream, Bill was just a couple steps behind his wife. All was normal. And then she would turn to look at him, and when she saw him, a look of terror would come over her face and she would take off running. Bill would startle awake at this point in the dream each and every time, and he'd be drenched in a cold sweat followed by this impending sense of dread. This same dream would last for a period of 2 years. Obviously not every night.
Yeah,
but
recurring dreams. We've all had them.
I've actually not.
Oh, you lucky.
Never had one.
Okay, well, you could have them your whole life.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
So this lasted for 2 years for him.
Okay, but yeah, that's an intense dream to have.
It is, especially if your spouse is like terrified of you in your dream. So it's now 1967 to put things in perspective. And the nightmares abruptly stopped. And they were now replaced by a different type of dream.
Oh, shit.
In this new dream, Bill would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of heavy panting from a wild animal somewhere in his bedroom. And then after a few seconds, Bill would then realize that the panting was coming from himself and that he was the animal. That was the new dream he was having.
That was the dream. It was like one of those things where you wake up, you think you're really awake.
Correct.
But you're not. Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. I think that's even more jarring because it's probably very confusing. You think you're awake.
Also, like, what if he was really panting in his sleep?
Could be.
Right? Like,
don't know.
If you talk in your sleep.
Yeah, it could have been what startles you awake.
Yeah.
So once again, there was another pause in the activity as it would be roughly 15 years before anything else occurred. So fast forward, it's now 1983, and Bill was in an English pub where he was having drinks with a few friends, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so they're having drinks, talking, chilling, doing whatever middle-aged men do at a pub. And all of a sudden, that familiar icy cold chill came over him again, just like it did when he was a kid that day that he was out in the yard. And so he knew something was wrong. He got up from the table and went straight to the bathroom. When he got in there, he looked in the mirror and didn't recognize what he was seeing staring back at him. He was looking straight into the eyes of a wolf.
What?
Mm-hmm. So anyway, Bill shook his head to like shake off the image and went back to the table with his friends. The icy chill had left at this time, but it left Bill feeling completely unsettled, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, wouldn't you go to your friends and be like,
No.
do you see anything on my face?
No. Well, I think he, like, probably knew that, like, it was part in his mind.
Okay. Yeah.
So he
Alright.
shook it off and was like, "I'm gonna go
Okay.
back to my
Yeah.
beer."
Yeah.
So the night ended and the group of men piled into one car to leave because they had all came together. So Bill and his one friend were in the back seat of the car when on their way home, out of nowhere, Bill lost control of himself again, like he did when he had become filled with that rage as a boy.
Oh,
But
no.
this time he started growling. His hands curled into claws, and then he lunged at his friend to try to bite his leg.
Oh, shit.
Uh-huh.
That's a little
And
extreme.
Bill was always described as like a very beautiful soul, kind man
Right.
before this. So just to
Not
put
aggressive.
no.
Right.
So the friend that was driving immediately pulled over and tried to get Bill out of the car, but Bill fought back. And after several minutes of rage, Bill finally calmed down as quickly as the rage came over him, and he seemed perfectly normal again. There wasn't anything reported on what the friends thought from this incident. Maybe they were just like, Bill can't hold his liquor, ease up on the scotch. I don't know what they thought,
Oh my
but that would
god.
have freaked me out.
I would not be hanging out with that friend again.
So, this, of course, being the slowest moving possession on the planet, it was another year and a half before anything else happened. Bill began experiencing chest pains, believing he was having a heart attack. He went to the local ER, and when he was getting his blood pressure checked, again, that familiar cold feeling came over him, and with the snap of a finger, he immediately changed. The nurse staff would later describe his physical changes as his shoulders hunching forward, his fingers and hands took on the shape of claws or talons, and he showed his teeth like an aggressive animal.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he took on an inhuman demeanor, they said, and he became very angry and volatile. This actually startled the nurses. You know, the nurses are equipped with dealing with all kinds of things, especially your ER nurses. They deal with
That's
everything
true.
under the
You're
sun.
right. Yeah.
But this startled them so much that they called the police. Like it
Yeah,
was
that would be
not normal.
pretty I could understand that. I could think of the ER nurse that I know and she'd be like,
Yeah, they weren't playing.
call the cops.
So it took several people to hold Bill back long enough for the police to get there and get him handcuffed. Once they got him handcuffed, that wasn't enough, though, to subdue Bill or for anyone to feel safe. So he had to be tranquilized.
I was waiting. I was like, why haven't they tranquilized him yet?
And that says a lot right there, right? Because once someone's like handcuffed, they can be maneuvered pretty
Yeah,
easily by
no.
officers.
Right.
This was not that case. And he wasn't a big guy. So it's not
Okay.
like he had this like 6'5" demeanor and handcuffs were still allowing him to like aggressively kick at people. Like he was not a big dude. So, and they were not able to subdue him.
Yeah.
So the next morning, Bill was his normal sweet self. Under the advisement of the doctor who listened to this calm, sweet Bill tell his story of the last, 30 plus years, Bill checked himself into a psychiatric hospital for observation because that's your logical next step. I would, think most people would think like that. So Bill only did a brief stint at the psychiatric hospital as no symptoms presented themselves while he was under the facility's care. Again, slow-moving possession. It's not every day these things are coming out. But less than 2 months later, Bill was back at the same psychiatric hospital with more chest pains that came on after he visited with his mom.
Okay.
I don't know, red flag. I don't know. I don't know if that's relevant. I don't know if she was nice. I don't know anything about her. But so Bill appeared fine until the nurse told him that she was going to get a doctor to assist with him when Bill became violent, throwing people aside as they came into the room and lunging at a nearby orderly, scaring him half to death. So 4 police officers showed up, and Bill got on all fours like a dog and began growling, snapping his teeth, and snarling.
Oh, shit.
Bill actually severely injured one of the officers to the point he had to be hospitalized for 4 days. Not Bill, the officer.
Yeah.
So by the time Bill was placed in the squad car again, he was back to normal and continued without any problems for some time. But the next time the police encountered Bill was the summer of 1987 when Bill made this is funny. Bill made a citizen's arrest
Oh
of a
God.
local teen prostitute. And without any explanation, put her in his car. She claims he looked really like confused, like didn't know what he was doing, but she was scared and got in the car with him and without any explanation drove her to the police station. So the moment Bill parked his car at the police station, the teen opened the door and like ran into the station. And that tells you something because she's a prostitute. You're not supposed to be doing what you're doing. And she's running to the police
Yeah,
station,
to
not
the
like the
cops.
opposite way. Right. So one of the officers stayed inside the station to talk to her, and another, Officer Terry Fisher, met Bill out in the parking lot. So this left Bill and this Officer Fisher alone and unattended in the parking lot.
Right.
So just to put things in perspective again, Officer Fisher was much bigger than Bill, being well over 6 feet, and he was like a real, burly guy's guy. And as he approached the car, Bill was in the process of starting to lose control of himself again.
Oh no.
The officer described Bill as having these wide eyes and a maniacal expression on his face. Bill looked at the officer and said, quote, "The devil is in me, and when the devil is in me, I am strong. I am going to kill you. I am strong, and you are going to die."
Holy shit. Cops probably deal with some really crazy shit, but that would
Well,
be
and paired with his demeanor,
yeah,
it
right?
was probably very malevolent.
Yeah.
That's at least how the officer described it. So Bill exited the car and lunged at this larger officer who was unarmed, by the way. And the officer responded with giving Bill a hard knee to the groin.
Ugh.
Bill, because that's all he
that,
couldn't do anything
well,
else.
no, that's a safe idea to stop, so I dig it.
So Bill hunched over and let out like a quick grunt, but then he shrugged it off and became even stronger and took the officer down to the ground, got on top of his chest, and started to choke the life out of him. So nearby officers kind of heard the commotion,
Yeah.
ran to help the downed officer, and Bill threw them off with superhuman strength. And in their own words, he threw them off like they were matchsticks. That's how easy he was able to like fling these guys off as they were coming to the officer's aid.
Superhuman power.
Yep, no stranger to possession cases.
Yeah.
So it would take 6 officers to pull Bill off of the downed officer as he was choking him. They were able to get him inside and they put him in a jail cell. So once Bill was locked in the cell, the officers weren't quite prepared for what they saw next. It wasn't one of those jail cells that has like the bars with the slats. It was just complete, like you couldn't see inside of it unless you looked through this tiny little slat in the door.
Yeah.
It was completely enclosed. So the slot was big enough just to be able to see like a pair of eyes and a nose. So the officers could look and make sure that the person wasn't doing anything, nefarious or anything in there.
Right.
But Bill was somehow able to force his entire head and right shoulder all the way up to his arm out of this small, narrow slit and began growling at the officers like a wild dog. They were so freaked out because you can put your hand through there.
I don't even know what to say to that.
But he was somehow, I don't know if we're talking about like shape-shifting or moving again, superhuman strength, being able to like force the slit. I don't know. But this was physically impossible for a normal person to do.
Yeah.
And the officers knew that. There was no question in their mind that what they were witnessing was something completely out of the ordinary. And they all testified to this in the police reports for that time. So a doctor was called in to, again, tranquilize Bill so that they could get his head and shoulder back out of the slot without causing him serious injury. And it took some time. Like they had to like pour soap, and like they were able to maneuver and manipulate his body because he was tranquilized, but they had to like really
That's
work
insane.
hard to get
Yeah.
his body back out of there in a way that wouldn't cause him harm. Isn't that crazy?
I feel like you're gonna say no to this. Are there pictures? Probably
There's
not.
pictures of the door. Yeah,
Really?
and I'll throw them up on social media. There's actual pictures of the door.
That he came out of.
Correct.
Oh shit.
Yeah, you can see how tiny it is. It's like 12 inches.
But the door that he came from.
It's the exact door. They were able to point to the exact door so then you can kind of envision how hard this was. Obviously, they didn't take pictures of that day, but yes, there are pictures of the door so you can see it.
That's insane.
So again, they doused him with soap and they were finally to get him out of this tiny little opening, and everyone was stunned and completely perplexed at how he was able to do it in the first place. So Officer Fisher was so unnerved by the attempted murder on himself by Bill and what he saw Bill do at the door that he opted to take an early retirement.
Yeah,
Poor
I
guy.
definitely would have done that.
Well deserved at this point.
And probably moved to the other side of the earth.
Probably.
Yeah.
So no charges were filed from that night, and Bill was released to a psychiatric facility where a number of tests, like they did MRIs, all kinds of tests were run on him for almost about a month, and the tests all came back normal, that Bill was fine, so he was released once again.
Yeah, okay.
So Bill had a growing fear that he would end up in prison or a psychiatric facility for the rest of his life, even though he had many people trying to help him. Like, he was honestly afraid he was going to hurt someone to the point of death. And if you're a caring person like he allegedly was when this wasn't happening,
Sure.
it's something that plagues you,
Yeah.
I would assume.
I could imagine.
So Bill found himself the center of media attention when his story made the news, and then subsequently a TV show called Sightings, which profiled unusual, strange, or paranormal phenomenon, featured him on the show.
Like, what was that magazine that would be in the grocery store, the newsstand, like National?
Like the weird ones
Yeah,
that
with like
Elvis
Bat
is
Boy.
alive
Yeah.
and roaming around. This, I think, is kind of more like because I've seen it. It's kind of like more along the lines of Unsolved Mysteries.
Okay.
Back in the day, not the
Yeah.
newer one.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bill was featured on this show. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, a married couple were visiting with friends when the TV show came on in the background. Thinking it was just another movie that was made featuring werewolves, the dinner party guests were amazed it was actually based on a real person. So this story about Bill caught the attention of this husband-wife duo. Any guesses as to who the husband-wife duo might be in Connecticut?
Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Ed and Lorraine Warren, well-known ghost hunters and demonologists.
None other than.
Of course. So Lorraine saw something sincere in Bill from this episode and was convinced after doing some research on his case that this was demonic possession. And she felt she and her husband would be able to help him.
Very on brand.
So on brand. Ed, however, wanted no part. He felt that getting entangled with a, quote, werewolf would be stretching their credibility just a bit too far. But Lorraine persisted.
Okay, that's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. He's like, no, Lorraine.
He's like, listen, we got to set the bar somewhere. And she's like, we're jumping over it.
Well, Lorraine was quoted as saying, she's like, I don't really get into like werewolves, vampires, all those goblins. And she doesn't like that.
Yeah.
Typically, she doesn't like that stuff. She sticks to hauntings.
But yeah, she liked to help people.
But
so
she saw something in Bill
yeah.
that just swayed her the other way. So Ed contacted the producer of the show Sightings to get some background info on Bill and to get information on how to locate him, which they couldn't really give him too much because, again, you have to like, I'm not saying it's HIPAA because HIPAA's medical, but you can't disclose personal information about your guest. I don't know what that's called. Oh, an NDA maybe. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. My brain today's not working right. So they couldn't just give out his address is what I'm saying. Right. And they didn't feature his last name, I don't think.
Okay.
But Ed and Lorraine purchased an interview that was done with the police officer that was attacked by Bill. And Lorraine, being a smart little cookie, she was able to narrow down to a like select few precincts in London based on the badge that the officer was wearing. She was like, I'm gonna find this werewolf if it's the last thing I do.
She's a really damn good researcher.
Give her credit. She's a sleuth.
Yeah.
So in the middle of the night, the Warrens flew over to London and began the search of the precinct that handled this matter. They were determined.
That's
Well, they were actually quoted later as saying this they felt like was like one of the most important cases of their career.
but I wonder if like Ed was like carrying the bags behind Lorraine as they
Probably.
walk, and he's like,
Wiping the sweat from his
"Why
brow.
are we doing
Why are we here?
this?"
I hate this. I hate everything about this. Okay, so the night they arrived, it was ironically a full moon.
Of course.
And the first precinct they went to was next to a pub called Wolf Pub. They just got a great chuckle out of this. But it wasn't the right precinct.
Also, like, all the pubs in England are just named after some animal. So,
yes.
you know, the odds are.
But the irony was not lost on them.
No.
They had to make note in every interview after this
God
was,
bless.
you know,
Of
the thing.
course.
So they were tactful about asking what they were looking for. They weren't specifying that they were there, like when they would walk into the precinct to be like, hey, are you the ones that dealt with this werewolf? They would walk into the precincts and ask if they had a case of lycanthropy,
Werewolf.
a belief that a person thinks that he or she has been transformed into an animal.
Yep.
So the first few stations had like no idea what Lorraine was talking about. So after some digging, Lorraine got the phone number of another precinct and started making small talk with the detective from there to break the ice. Finally, he asked, "You're looking for our werewolf, aren't you?" Lorraine finally got the right precinct, and she's like, you cannot imagine how happy we were.
It's bizarre, like, how much work they did.
Just to get this guy. Like, and they couldn't get a hold of him any other way other than going over there and
It's
trying
not
this
like they
angle.
could Google.
They didn't no, they had nothing like that. So the detective confirmed that Bill lived in their town and was a, quote, respected guy with a nice wife.
Of course.
Aren't they all?
Yeah.
Aren't they all nice?
Sure.
Or bland until this crazy thing happens. So it was arranged that the Warrens would meet Bill, and Ed asked Officer Fisher, the one who he had taken down, if he would join them. And he flat out was like, hell no, I'm going nowhere near this guy. I will give you what you need from me, but I never want to see him again. It scarred him like that much.
Yeah.
So Ed and Lorraine made sure that they met Bill in a public place because, in Ed's words, this guy must be pretty bad. Here we are. We're going to interview Bill, just Lorraine and I, in this pub. I picked out the pub because I wanted it to be in a public place. I didn't want to meet him in some lonely room somewhere. Ed. So logical. Well, I guess Ed probably was so freaked out that this big, huge officer was like, no, don't want to see him. Don't want to go there.
I would agree.
So the Warrens met with Bill, and after some discussion, they told him that they believed that he was under the possession of an evil wolf spirit. Bill thought this was insane.
Of course.
Wasn't buying any of it. Ed tried reasoning with Bill and offered to bring Bill back to the States to undergo an exorcism. After some thought, Bill figured he had done everything else, testing, psychiatric facilities, jail, because he would actually go to the police stations when he felt that feeling and ask to be locked up.
Yeah, okay.
And hang out there until it was done because he was so scared. So he had tried everything in his power, and he decided he had nothing to lose, so he agreed.
I guess they had to make sure they booked the plane at a time when he wasn't going to have an episode.
Yeah,
right?
or have like...
Because I would be afraid to fly.
But you remember, slowest possession on the planet.
That's true.
You can kind of calculate, we've got 2 years before the next one, I'm thinking. So Bill and his wife, Nina, flew to Connecticut in July of 1989 to have his exorcism. And just in the nick of time, too, because once they arrived, it was the night before the exorcism took place. Bill tried strangling his wife while she was asleep. So he obviously didn't succeed, thank God.
Right.
So now the Warrens had lined up a close friend, Bishop Robert McKenna, who was no stranger to performing exorcisms. He'd done this many times. And they met him and brought Bill along to a Catholic church.
Okay.
While Bill had agreed to do the exorcism, it's still clear that he had zero faith in what was to come.
Going on, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the crossover with like Catholic Church and Where I mean, it's
It's
such
a
a
lot.
yeah, it's such a different this is such a different story than what we're used
Yeah, when we
to.
think of possessions, we obviously think of demons, but in a more human
Right.
form that our human
Yeah.
brains can handle, so you're not thinking of, like, an animal.
Right.
And I don't know how Robert McKenna was, like, explain this to him, like, I don't know how, but I'm sure Lorraine did a great job at doing it because he showed up.
Right, that's true.
So, Bill, though, was still thinking this was, like, something only you see in the movies, it was outlandish, and I'm sure he was like, "Hey, let's just get a trip to Connecticut to the States out of it," and didn't really think anything of
Right.
it. Lorraine was quoted as saying later that anyone who doesn't believe that werewolves exist should have been in that church that day. Lorraine.
I love Lorraine.
You do now.
I do now. I used to not. Alright.
Okay, so Bill was strapped to an armchair in front of like the pews in the church. They brought 6 men armed with stun guns in
Okay.
just in case something went wrong and Bill got loose because they had heard all about this like superhuman strength and how he could take down men. And
Yeah, that's pretty
Lorraine and Ed were
smart.
not
They weren't
taking
f
any chances. They
Yeah.
wanted to help him, but they wanted to help themselves, like, oh, make sure they were safe.
They said, "Fool me once, no, no, no."
No, no, no. So as soon as the bishop began the exorcism prayer, Bill started to shake and tremble. So he went from zero belief to like shaking.
Okay.
When the bishop placed his hands on top of Bill's head, Bill said later it felt as though he was hit by a hammer and remembered nothing after that point. Witnesses describe Bill as going into a trance like state after that. For the first half of the exorcism, Bill didn't move or make any noise.
Whoa.
As things progressed and they thought, oh, well, maybe this isn't working or maybe this will be easy, suddenly Bill changed into a werewolf in front of everyone's eyes. And again, we are thinking he's growing hair. No, that's not how this
Right.
happens. We have to like take ourselves down a notch or
Yeah,
two.
this isn't,
Teen Wolf.
no.
It began with the muscles in the back of Bill's neck starting to enlarge and protrude. Then his
Okay.
ears twisted into a point at the top, followed by him letting out a bone chilling howl that was not something any human can do. And it gave everyone the chills in this church because it was very animalistic. That familiar rage came over Bill as his fingers twisted into claws and he started showing his teeth while he growled and snarled like a rabid dog. And if you've ever seen like a wolf or a dog aggressively growl, it's scary
It
because
is
you know they're going to rip
scary,
you to
yeah.
shreds. And
They're
this is the same feeling that they got by watching Bill.
they're, like, drooling
Yeah,
and
it's
ugh.
it's it's
Yuck.
terrifying. Bishop McKenna cast out the demon in Jesus' name and continued with the prayer of exorcism. Then, so that all those things that Bill had just gone through, that transformation,
Mhm.
Bill started to relax and his facial features returned to normal. And slowly and surely, Bill began to feel the energy lift from him. Bill, his wife Nina, the Warrens, and the bishop relished in the fact that Bill told them he felt like a normal person for the first time. Bill was later quoted as saying he was so happy that day that he wanted to kiss Bishop McKenna. He was just so elated that he just wanted to kiss him. He was actually really shocked that it worked. Now, again, slowest possession on the planet. I don't know if I would have rejoiced that soon,
Yeah,
but
well,
he obviously felt a change in himself. I guess it's like one of those things where when you're not going through it, you still feel it. Like,
right.
so from that point on, though, seems Bill and Nina went on to live a quiet, normal life. Nina worked in immigration. Bill was a carpenter by trade. They had a family dog. Kids were in college. And Bill had no further issues related to the days when he would turn into a werewolf.
That's so crazy.
So it just ended. I guess in my mind, it's like whatever was possessing him was like doing other things, possessing the other people, and they would just like pop in and out with Bill. I don't understand why it wasn't like full blown, why it was
Well,
this like slow burn
and maybe because it was a different
type.
type of spirit, right?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So I wanted to end this case by reading a quote from Ed Warren in regards to Bill's possession. Ed said, "Possession by the wolf spirit. The wolf spirit in this case would be demonic. The Indians believed that it was an actual wolf spirit, an animal wolf. There were were tigers, there are were hippopotamuses. Father Michael of Nigeria, Africa, worked with Lorraine and me years ago. He told us about his village in Nigeria, Cross River, and how the hippopotamus and the crocodiles would be possessed by what they call the Water Society, which were men that would go into a catatonic state. They would leave that physical body with the astral body and they would possess the body of a crocodile or a hippo or a tiger, and then they would do their foul deeds. So there you have it. Real werewolf case.
It makes a good case for just general possession.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of that crazy shit, how would you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, he had that superhuman
And I mean,
strength.
even, like if you think about it, like if you've ever been yelled at someone when you literally like see their face
Oh,
change,
yeah.
you can
It's scary.
understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was like tenfold.
Right.
And it happened when he was a kid, like that day. It's
Yeah.
like something crept in somehow.
Right. So that would be my thing is like what was going on. And I also wonder like maybe did he get possessed or bewitched, right? Did it come like a curse?
Yeah, did someone put it
Because
upon him?
that's the werewolf story.
Yep.
Is, they get like what cursed by the traveling lady and
I mean, who knows? His dad was in the military. Who knows what he encountered overseas?
I dig it.
It's a good story for you, Emily. Did this
It
do
was
it
a
for
really
you?
good
Did
story.
this hit the spot?
Yeah, that was. It's funny. Like it's not what I was expecting.
Mm-mm.
Even when you began.
So I will put up clips of the sightings episode that Bill was on
Okay.
our social media, and I'll put up a few pictures too that I think were interesting. But
Yeah,
I have a feeling this won't be the first time Ed and Lorraine Warren will visit our cases.
they're gonna live in them. Anytime we do a
Possession case.
semi-modern contemporary possession case,
They're there. They're right there, at least on the periphery.
Yeah.
It's crazy werewolf story. I gotta pee so
I
bad.
figured.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Hosting Evil. For more information on this case and others, you can visit our website at hostingevilpodcast.com.
And don't forget to check us out on social media at Hosting Evil Podcast.
Until next time, I'm Jess. Peace, love, and light.
And I'm Emily. Keep fighting those demons.
Hosting Evil is recorded and produced by Carly Strange at Rockdale Studios.